Good morning. Sorry about that. I forgot the pulpit. So good to see you guys today. So I wanted to just tell you about the experience of my birth with my first daughter, Charlotte. You guys know who Charlotte is? You see her running around. Looks like this here, right here. She made this cake, by the way, from scratch. She did an incredible job. And she is wonderful. She's about 9 years old. So this takes place about almost 9 years ago, I suppose, so, right? So she surprised us because she was supposed to go the full 40 weeks. That's what you're supposed to do when you're pregnant. But she came at 36 weeks. She came 4 weeks early, and she was totally unexpected. We had no clue that it was going to happen. And so my wife had come home early that day from work, and it was just before Christmas. So she had her Christmas party, and she had planned all that at work. She comes home, she's exhausted, so I expected she was going to be tired. She went to the bathroom, and I know you're like, TMI, but this is important. She went to the bathroom, and then she went to bed and napped for like 45 minutes. And there was a guy at the church who had a small group, and he kept asking me to come. It was a small group for men, and I was part of the small. I was a pastor over those things at the time. And so he said, "Hey, can you come one night?" And I said, "Okay, this is the night I'm going to come." So I ended up saying to my wife, "Hey, listen, I'm leaving, and I'll be back." So I left. Now the drive, if you're familiar with Broward and Dade County, we were driving across the line. I'm heading over on the Palmetto Expressway. It's about 35 minutes. It's about rush hour because it's getting close to 7:30 at night. And so I head on over there, and as I'm getting on the Palmetto Expressway, I'm already like 15 minutes away from my house. My wife calls, and she says, "John." I'm like, "Yes, how are you doing?" She goes, "Good. I think my water broke." I'm like, "What are you talking about? How do you know?" She goes, "Well, when I came home, I went to the bathroom. And then I just slept and got up, and I just went to the bathroom." I'm like, "Well, maybe you had a lot to drink, a lot of water or something." She goes, "No, but you don't understand. I couldn't stop going. Like, it just kept happening, and I don't know what's going on. I think it was my water that broke." And I'm like, "You really?" And I'm like, "Honey, the baby's not due here for another 4 weeks. Are you sure?" She's like, "I'm not sure." So I said, "Well, the guy that I'm going to, his house, his wife, his name was Yvette. His name is Billy. His wife is Yvette, and Yvette is a nurse. So I will get there, hopefully she'll be home, and I'll ask her." So I'm like, okay. So I continue on another 15 minutes or so and get to his house. I walk in, and thank God, Yvette's right there at the door in her scrubs. And she had just gotten home from work. So I'm still on the phone with my wife. I'm like, "Yvette, here, take the phone." My wife thinks she broke her water. She's like, "Oh, give me that phone." So she's talking, and then I kind of wander into the back, and there's a group of guys in there, and they're like, "Hey, what's going on?" And I'm starting to feel like I'm a zombie. I'm kind of in a daze, and I'm like, "I think I'm having a baby." They're like, "What?" I'm like, "Well, we're having I think it's going to happen now or something. That's what I'm not sure." And so they're like, "Well, sit down, dude. Here, we eat dinner," and they hand me a plate of pasta and a salad, and I'm like trying to eat. I'm just kind of staring, and they're talking, and we're going back and forth. And then Yvette, after a while, a few minutes, comes in to the back room, and she's like, "John, what are you still doing here? Your wife broke her water. You need to get to the hospital now, like right now, right?" And I'm like, "Really?" I'm still eating. It was like, I'm still in a daze. Like, is this really happening? Because it can't happen. It's like 4 weeks early, okay? And it's like, this is the 22nd of December. I'm like, I don't want Charlotte to come on the 22nd or the 23rd or the 24th because it's too close to Christmas. And you know what happens to the kids who have birthdays on too close to Christmas? They don't get the same amount of presents. And we're like, "Oh, sure they do." But if you had your birthday around that time, all of you know you get ripped off. That's the truth. And I'm like, this can't be happening right now. And besides, the house isn't ready. We still haven't finished up. We had 4 more weeks. I haven't finished up her nursery. I'm thinking all this stuff. It just can't be possible. And she's like, takes the plate out of my hand. All right, turns me around. "Now go, leave." And so I get back in the car. I drive home. I get my wife. There's a little bit more to the story. But we get there. Once we get to the hospital, they immediately put her in triage, and they go, "You need to be in a birthing room right now." They get her in the birthing room, and 2.5 hours later, we have Charlotte. And then she shows up. Here she is on her little, look at how cute she is. She was so adorable. She had these little eyes. She's looking around, and then I fell in love with her, and that's what happened. But that moment that she told me, "You need to go. You're having a baby," it was a surreal moment. It's one of those moments that you're like, is this really happening right now? We've all experienced them some way, shape, or form in our lives. It's like, is this really happening right now? Because I'm finding it hard to believe it. Because I'd been waiting for her to come, right? We knew she was coming. There was no question. My wife's belly's out to here. We had heartbeats. We knew all this stuff is happening, and we knew it. We expected it, but still, I was in shock, and I'm like, I'm not sure what to do. I mean, I'd never had a baby before, so a lot of that was all new ground for me. It was like, I'm not sure what's going to happen. But of course, you got to do something. You can't just sit around when it's time. Like, you got to get to the hospital. And since her water broke, there was nothing that was going to stop Charlotte from coming at that point. It's like, it's imminent. It has to happen. It's going to happen. And so this is going to sound like a strange right angle, but a right turn all of a sudden. But the return of Jesus is going to be the same way, okay? The return of Jesus is going to be similar. The Bible is clear in many places that Jesus will actually return to this earth. And the hope of all Christians is that Jesus will come to the earth and he will rule and reign here. And that is going to happen. In fact, the Jewish people believe the same thing. God made many promises to them that the son of David, one of their future kings, will come and reign forever here on this planet. And so there's no question that that time is drawing near. And so what I wanted to say is, if it sounds a little strange for you today, this is not your normal message because of the series that we're currently in. And so Jesus is going to come back according to what we know about Scripture. Given some of the recent global events, you and I might be wondering, is that going to happen soon? We had a worldwide pandemic that, depending on your stats, and I'm not going to argue one way or another, but according to stats, 6.1 million people died across the globe because of this pandemic, which caused us to wonder, what is going on? A major war is currently happening in Europe as we speak. And potential wars in Asia are imminent, according to what we hear out of certain media outlets. You see, we see concern for global warming and climate change, and there's a rise in atheism like no other time. And this could cause us to wonder, is now the time? Is now the time that Jesus is actually going to come back? Is he coming soon? And what will be the signs of his return? Because it's gone a long time and we haven't seen him come back, and it's almost become like a myth to some of us. We're like, is it really true? Is that going to happen? Well, according to the Bible, it is. And how am I going to prepare for such a thing? Like, if it's coming right now, how do I get myself ready for it? What should I be doing? And so that's what we're going to kind of talk about today. And so we're in the last series of a message series called Immovable, Unrelenting Faith for Uncertain Times. It's a study of an Old Testament book by the name of Daniel. And so the reason it's called Immovable is because Daniel's unrelenting faith during this whole time. He has every reason in his life to give up on God. He's actually writing this book as a refugee in a foreign land. He's in Babylon because the Babylonians, Nebuchadnezzar, this is just history, came into the area of Israel and took them out. He wrecked the city and he took back a bunch of them captive back to Babylon. He's in a foreign land. He's displaced from his family and his city lies in ruins, and he's being tested over and over again. But through it all, his faith remains unmovable. It remains strong. And so we can learn to have immovable faith too. We're going to need it, by the way, because in every generation throughout history, the faith of God's people has been tested. Half of the book of Daniel is filled with vision and prophecy. One half is all the stories that have happened while he was there. The other half is telling us something about the future. They tell us about the time of the end, a time where you and I are going to need unrelenting faith. We're getting to that point where that's what we have to have. And that time today is the end of the chapter, the end of the book of Daniel, where he speaks about that time, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And it's going to raise a lot of questions, like I said before. Are we close to those last days? How will we know when those days are here? What's going to happen? And what should I be doing with my life? And so let's find out today as we study this last chapter. It begins here in the first verse. At that time, Michael, he's an angel, shall stand up, the great prince who stands watch over the sons of your people, and there shall be a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation, even to that time. But at that time, your people shall be delivered, every one who is found written in the book. And many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. Those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the firmament, and those who turn many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. Okay, so he's like, what is going on here if you are reading this? And we're kind of picking it up. If you haven't been with us for the last few weeks, this was a continuation of 3 chapters. It started in chapter 10, and it was a last vision that he had received, that Daniel had received, and he's writing it down. And these are actually, this last part we just read is the last of that prophecy, or the vision that he received. And it describes the events that will happen in a 7-year period of our age, and it's called the tribulation. Many people have heard that word. Has anybody heard of the Great Tribulation or the tribulation out there? Okay, if not, I'm going to show you a little timeline to give you some help here. So the cross over here is where Jesus came in 30 AD. He died and he rose again. And then there's this time of the church age, or what's called the time of the Gentiles. And it's a dotted line because we don't know how long that time is going to be. And so far it's been about 2,000 years roughly. And then comes this 7-year period. And if you were studying with us on Daniel chapter 9, by the way, you can go to our YouTube channel or go to our website and see all of these messages and kind of catch up on any of this that you may have missed. But there's a last 7-year period where God is going to use Israel. It's for the people of Israel, it's called the time of Jacob's trouble. What we know it as is the Great Tribulation. And it's a 7-year period. And so this is what's happening here. And what Daniel is describing is what's going to happen right here at this 7-year period. Now, at this point, Israel, at this 7-year period, because what's going to happen is the Antichrist, he's a figure of Satan. You have to read this, you have to study this in one of our other messages, but halfway through, he comes into this with a covenant of peace with Israel and with the whole world. But then he begins to start wars, and then halfway through he sets up an image in the third temple that will exist in Israel of himself to be worshipped as God. And when that happens, Israel is going to resist. And when they resist, he's going to make war with them and go after them for that 3.5-year period. So what happens is, right there, Michael, the angel, will stand up to protect Israel. That's what he's saying. At that moment, Michael stands up and helps them. You see, Jesus gave us this warning to the people of Israel, and he's talking in the book of Matthew when the disciples ask him, what's going on at the time of the end? Go to the next verse, please. He says, Jesus answering, so when you see the holy place, the abomination that causes desolation, that is the statue of himself, spoken through the prophet Daniel, let the reader understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let no one on the housetops go down to take anything out of the house. Let no one on the field go back to get their cloak. How dreadful it will be in those days for pregnant women and nursing mothers. Pray that your flight will not take place in winter or on the Sabbath, for then there will be great distress, unequaled from the beginning of the world until now, and never to be equaled again. So it's this moment, Jesus is warning them, hey, when you see that happen, this guy, the Antichrist, is going to come after you guys. You need to run. If you want to preserve your life, you need to run. That's what he's telling them. And so Daniel describes, then he fast forwards, kind of. Let's go back to this. So then he fast forwards. What happens is right after that 7-year period, there's going to be what's called a millennial reign where Jesus comes back. He returns here. And there's going to be peace on earth until the end of that 1,000 years. And then there's a new heaven and a new earth, which is that eternal state that we all are going to live in with God. And so he fast forwards to this moment that's called the white throne judgment, where he said, many of you will rise, right, to either everlasting contempt or you'll shine bright like the stars. He's talking about this moment right here. He kind of fast forwards to the very end. And so when you read this, and I don't know, this last verse or two, and I was reading it, I don't know why, but I felt very small. I felt like my life is very insignificant compared to what's going on. And so this is something, if you'll follow along in your outline, actually fill in the blanks, it'll help this message stick. So the first thing I'd like you to know is this: your life is part of a much bigger story, and how much it depends on you. How much you're part of that story will depend on you. So we're part of this grand story of God, but you and I, we're not the main character. Jesus happens to be the main character. But we all have a part to play. Now, I don't know how old everyone here is in this audience, but I remember when I was young, we didn't have like all these PlayStations and all these other things. In fact, if you didn't really have much when games came out, video games, I don't know why I got stuck there, right? And so, does anyone remember arcades? We still kind of have them today, like Chuck E. Cheese, right? But you would go to an arcade to actually play video games. And there was one near me, because we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have those games, and it was called the Dream Machine in the Eastfield Mall there in Massachusetts. And so I would go to the Eastfield Mall just to go to it. This is what it looked like kind of right there, the Dream Machine, and you would go and play on these video games. Back then, they didn't use tokens or credit cards. You would actually just bring your quarters, and then you would go to a machine, and if somebody was already playing the machine, you would put your 2 quarters down on it going like, I'm next, right? And so if you went to one that was very popular, like Space Invaders or Asteroids, all these, then you'd be rows of quarters there, and you would remember which one's yours by putting like a penny on it or whatever, and when you finally got to it, you got your turn. I remember one time watching a game, and it was taking forever. This guy was so good, and I'm like, can you just lose already? Because I want to play. And I had put my quarters down, but there's somebody before me. I saw some quarters, but I look around, I don't see any kids. I'm like, where are the kids? And my brothers are there, and I'm like, nobody's claiming those. I'm going to take those when it's my turn. I'm like, And so the guy's playing. Finally, he finishes, and just as I'm about to grab the quarters, a man that had been standing behind me the whole time reaches down, grabs the quarters, and puts them in the machine. I'd been looking for a kid, and this guy was standing over me the whole time. Because sometimes we're so focused on our world, we don't realize there's a greater world out there. Isn't that true? Like we get so focused on that. And it's only human to think of our own world. We get consumed kind of with our own lives, and that's kind of natural. But most of us don't get up in the morning and think, like, how can I change the world for the better today? Do you get up and think that? If you do, you're a saint, and you can be up here preaching next week. But I don't think like that. I'm like, man, is that a new pain in my back and my neck? Right? That's what I'm thinking when I get up. Like, where did that come from? Is it going to go away? And then I'm thinking, like, what should I have for breakfast? Or like if you're going to school, you're like, did I do all my homework? I got to remember, right? Or maybe you're thinking, is the boss going to be in a good mood today, or is he going to be in a bad mood? I'm thinking about me. I'm wondering about how I'm going to spend my day and the things that are going to affect my life, because it's all about me, right? That's what I think about when I get up. And naturally, again, we're going to think about the things that are most important to us. But there is so much more out there. You see, if we only think of ourselves, then we're kind of just really thinking small in the grand scheme of the story of God. You see, we're part of a much bigger story. And when you realize this, you start to think outside of your life. It directs us to think about others, to think about bigger things that are going on. If we could understand our part, we might have a different perspective on our lives. You see, we're not called to close ourselves off from the rest of the world. We're not called to build our own kingdoms. Jesus said, I'm building my kingdom. And we're not called to, we're not called to care only about ourselves. We're called to care about other people. And I think that's what Jesus meant when he said this. He's talking to his disciples again. He says, you are the salt for everyone on the earth. But listen to this. If your salt no longer tastes like salt, how can it make food salty? Like if you're no longer being what you're supposed to be, then you're not really here being used for your purpose. All it is good for is to be thrown out and walked on. You are the light for the whole world. A city built on top of a hill cannot be hidden, and no one lights a lamp and puts it under a clay pot. Instead, it is placed on a lampstand where it can give light to everyone in the house. Make your light shine so others will see the good you do and will praise your Father in heaven. You see, we're not supposed to be hiding our talents, hiding our skills under a basket or someplace else. God has given us these things so that we can use them for His glory. You see, each and every one of us, we have a message inside of us. If we've come to believe in Jesus Christ, then we have one of the best messages that the whole world could ever hear in any time throughout history. Because it's a message that changes lives. It's a message that changes people's eternities. There's nothing else like it. It's a message of light and hope, and that light and hope is in you. So turn to your neighbor and say, you are the hope of the world. Do you believe that? You're like, oh, that sounds a little funny. All right, Joe believes that he is the light of the world, the hope of the world. Because you are. But it's not you. It's what's inside of you. It's Jesus who's inside of you. I love what Paul's writing to the Corinthians. He says this. Listen to this. Go ahead, put up the verse. We are like clay jars in which this treasure is stored. Like a clay jar. You wouldn't really store a treasure in a clay jar, right? You think it's something better than that. But that's what we are. We're just clay jars. And there's a treasure inside of us. The real power comes from God and not from us. Each and every one of us has this inside of us, we're being told. And the bigger story invites us into something bigger. How many of us when we read that verse, I kind of read it kind of quickly, but the very first verse, when we were talking about us shining like stars forever. I mean, that's a cool thing. And I'm like, yeah, that's me. Sign me up for that one. That's the one I want. I want to shine like the stars forever. But there is a catch to that. And he said it right there. It's about turning people toward Christ. Those who turn people toward righteousness will shine like the stars forever. You see, this invitation is not for good people. It's not for religious people. It's for every people, everybody, every one of us. And when it's all said and done, Daniel's saying what matters most is what we do with what God has given us. Paul kind of puts it this way. He wants us to strive for that kingdom. Listen to what Paul says. Go ahead, put it on the screen. You know that many runners enter a race. Everybody who enters that race, there's a lot of people in that race, and only one of them wins the prize. So run to win. Athletes work hard to win a crown that cannot last, but we do it for a crown that will last forever. His encouragement is like, you're in this race. We're all in this race of life right now, every single one of us. And he says, run like you want to win. Run like you're going to be the best one, the one at the top. Not in our own lives, not in our own kingdoms, but for God's kingdom. That's what he's talking about. He's like, give it your all, try your best, do what the best you can, do it as if you were going to win. If you were in a race, you would race as you would give it everything in that moment. When we practice, we don't always race. We don't always give it everything that we have. But in that moment of the race, you go, this is it. It's do or die. I'm not going to leave anything on the field. That's it. And that's what Paul's saying. Run your race like that. Live your life like that. So this is the end of the vision right there. But the angel has a few more things to say to Daniel, and we're going to pick it up right here in the next verse. He says, but you, Daniel, so he's like, here's the vision. But Daniel, here's what I want you to do. Shut up the words and seal the book until the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. And then I, Daniel, looked, and there stood two others, one on this riverbank and the other on that riverbank. And so this kind of floats back to a minute. There was two. He gets this vision at the Tigris River, and there's one angel on one side, another angel on the other. And we're going to see in a moment that Jesus is above the middle of the river. But he just adds that because it's part of the verse. But he's really focusing on the fact that, listen, we're going to seal up the end of this prophecy. Seal it up. Why? Because these events weren't going to happen in Daniel's lifetime. In fact, last week, the week before last, 2 weeks ago, we talked about all the events that already occurred in history, which is an incredible study. And we could have gone in so much more depth, but I just wanted us to get a taste of what it looked like for God to speak his word in the Old Testament and then have it come true. And they were able to look back in history and see it happen. But there are a few things that are still going to happen. And he say, those things, the book that are sealed, we couldn't understand. And they will be unsealed at a time that we're better able to understand them. That's simply what it meant. You see, it's been over 2,500 years since Daniel wrote this prophecy. And so we're getting closer to that time, and I believe it's coming soon. And if that's true, if it is coming soon, then it should create an urgency in you and I, shouldn't it? And that's the next point I would like you to understand is this. The closer we get to the end, the greater the urgency to be ready, for you and me to be ready. If it's coming, you and I would say, yeah, we need to do this. You see, the angel characterized the time of the end as people coming, running to and fro, and that knowledge will increase. And it can kind of mean two things. The people are traveling a lot, and knowledge is increased. And that certainly has happened. I mean, we've gone to the moon within the last, 60 years or so? We've been to the moon and back. We go all over the country. We have technology has advanced at such an alarming rate in just the last 50 years, more than any time in the history of our world. If you go back 100 years or 200 years ago, they were still using the horse and buggy, right? And now we're flying in jet airplanes and stuff. Who knows? Teleportation might come after this. I don't even know. But we see there's so much more that we understand. The second thing is even about prophecy, because we have the benefit of hindsight. Even with history and knowledge and technology advancing, we can see some things that could possibly take place that are in the book of Revelation. For instance, we could see how the Antichrist could actually control the one world economy. My wife just yesterday, her sister, had put on this huge fair for, I forget the name of the company, but it was all about Bitcoin, an online currency. And most of us who've been following along realize we're probably headed in that direction when it comes to our economic systems all across the world. So that could easily take place. We can actually see it and envisioning it happening. There's also a verse within Revelation. There's these two prophets that rise up for God. They do these great miracles, but God allows them to be defeated, and they die in Jerusalem, and it says the whole world will see them. You imagine 50 years ago, we said, maybe if you read the paper, perhaps on the nightly news, we could pick up our phones today and see it happening live stream anywhere in the world. And for that verse to become literally true, we're like, wow, this could be the time of the end. We can actually see these things occurring. You see, the disciples asked Jesus this very question that probably you and I are asking ourselves at this moment. If this is true, that Christ is coming back, what are the signs? When are you coming back? And listen what Jesus' response was to them. Jesus answered, "See to it that no one deceives you. For many will come in my name, claiming I am the Christ, and will deceive many." Obviously, he's talking about the Antichrist is going to try to win them over. Hey, worship me, not God. You will hear wars and rumors of wars, but see to it that you are not alarmed. These things must happen, but the end is still to come. Nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of birth pains. I took this trip when I was younger to go out to California, and I took a road trip with my friends. We took the northern route. We actually went up into Canada, and then we went up north, visited some friends, and we're going through South Dakota. And when you hit South Dakota, if you've ever been there are these billboards you'll see for Wall Drug. I don't know if you've ever heard of Wall Drug, but I've also found out that there is a billboard in every state of the union that has a Wall Drug billboard on it. And see, what happened was, this is if you follow Route 90, which is the turnpike, at least it was in Massachusetts where I lived, and you go all the way across the country, it'll lead you right by it. And what happened was, when it was only car travel and not air travel, they had all these signs on the road that would say, to get them to come over, free coffee. And so people would stop off on the way because they weren't flying, they were using their cars, and this place built up to be this big tourist spot now. And you can go there, and they tell all the history, and it's a lot of fun. But when I was there, I had a buffalo burger. That was the first time in my life, because you're in the Midwest, so that was kind of interesting. But the point of the story is, as you got closer and closer, those signs popped up more and more. I mean, it was like every mile. I'm sick of Wall Drug. And you're like, I better just go visit it, because I'm never, you feel like it's like the thing popping up on your phone all the time. So we just took a left turn, and we saw Wall Drug. And it was okay. It was all right. I don't know if I could recommend it. But if you're out in South Dakota, there's not much else to do. So probably go to Wall Drug. It's the same thing that happens to Disney, right? Have you guys ever gone to Disney? What happens? The closer you get, the more signs you see. The more signs. You get to Kissimmee, and they're like every mile. And that's what it's like. Jesus likens it to birth pains. Birth pains get closer together, and they get greater intensity as you get closer to the birth of the baby. And every mother here knows that. And so that's what he's saying. Listen, what's going to happen is you're going to see these things, but you're going to see them with greater frequency and greater intensity. You see, the Bible characterizes the end times as a time of wars and rumors of wars. We just read it. Earthquakes and famines. A gathering of the Jewish people back into their nation. That happened in 1948, by the way. A departure from the truth, where good is called evil and evil is called good. By removing definitions in our culture, we're removing truth and accountability. We're seeing that kind of happening right now. If you can't define it, then how are we supposed to manage it? How are we supposed to be accountable to anything? So we're removing the truths from our lives, and a falling away from God and Christianity is going to happen in those last days. These wars and rumors of wars, we're experiencing them right now. All of us are praying for the Ukraine. And we're worried about Taiwan when it comes to China. And we're seeing, we're supposed to be getting better as a humanity, aren't we? As people, aren't we supposed to be more peaceful? Aren't we supposed to be more understanding and more tolerant? And yet wars are still happening, and they're increasing. And if you go to Africa, you're going to find it there too. Nations against nations, it's happening. And prophecy, by the way, is not meant to just pique our curiosity. You see, we should be expecting these things because they are written, and we should understand that they're going to happen. But they're not just to pique our curiosity and go, wow, that's really cool. It's actually supposed to motivate our activity. That's what prophecy was for. It's not just to predict the future, but to change our present, because we say this is going to happen. So what are we going to do about it today? By the way we react is how we understand where we're going. If we believe Jesus was coming back today, our actions would show it, wouldn't it? Because we'd be like, wow, I believe he's coming back. Then I need to do things accordingly. If you went to the doctor and found out that you had a year to live, you and I would probably live a whole lot differently, wouldn't we, in that last year? We'd be thinking, man, if I only got a year to live, I'd start focusing on the things that are most important. Maybe there's some people I need to forgive, or people I need to make up with. Or I really want to spend time with my kids and my wife, they're closest to me, and my family members. We'd start focusing on the things that are most important. And there would be a whole bunch of things that we wouldn't do anymore. We just go forget that. I'm not working again. That's it. What are they going to do? I'll charge those cards up. They can't come after a dead man, right? That doesn't even matter anymore. But I'm going to focus instead on something else. There are things we would get rid of, and there are things that we would start focusing on if we knew that time was short. And that's the way it is with God. That's what Jesus is saying. You see, God never gave us an exact time of when he comes back. In fact, when they asked Jesus, he goes, no one knows the time. Not even me. Not even the Son of Man. Only God in heaven knows it. And this is what he said, though, about it. Listen to these words from the revelation that John got. He says, look, I come as unexpectedly, as a thief. A thief doesn't announce when he's coming. Why doesn't he announce it? Because you'd be ready for him. The cops would be there. You'd have your alarm on. You'd lock your doors, right? He goes, he come like a thief. Blessed are all who are watching for me, who keep their clothing ready so they will not have to walk around naked and ashamed. He's like, look, I'm going to come quickly. I'm going to come fast and unexpected. You see, why did he do this? Why does he leave this life, want us to live a life of expectancy? I believe he wanted every generation to live like Jesus is coming at any minute. So he's like, I'm not going to tell you when it is because I want you to live like you're running the race. I want you to live like it's an important thing because you're not sure when I'm coming or not. I don't know this about you, and maybe you're like me. I'm a procrastinator, okay? We should have Procrastinators Anonymous, and I'll be the head guy, all right? We'll stand up and welcome to Procrastinators Anonymous. My name is John. Because I'm a procrastinator. But you know what I do? I still watch the clock. And every one of us who's a procrastinator, we still watch the clock. And when it gets down to those last few minutes or that last hour, that last day, whatever it is, we're like, all right, I better get moving. That's what I do. I'm like, okay, I'm going to work doubly hard. I don't know why that motivation really helps me, but that's what happens. I keep my eyes on the clock. And as the time draw nears, my behavior totally changes on whatever it is that event is coming or whatever needs to be due. I start working on it really hard. You see, we're seeing a time where we must be preparing appropriately. We're nearing the end, and we should be living like it. So we're just going to finish the chapter here. I don't want to keep you too long today, so here we go. And the angels on the two rivers, remember, on the side of each river, clothed in linen. The one said to the man clothed in linen, this is Jesus who's above the waters of the river, how long shall the fulfillment of these wonders be? And then I heard the man clothed in linen who was above the waters of the river, when he had held up his right hand and his left hand to heaven, and swore by him who lives forever that it shall be a time, times, and half a time. And when the power of the holy people has been completely shattered, all these things shall be finished. Although I heard and I did not understand, I said, my Lord, what shall be the end of these things? And he said, go your way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end. Many shall be purified, made white, and refined, but the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. And from the time that the daily sacrifice is taken away and the abomination of desolation is set up, there shall be 1,290 days. Blessed is he who waits and comes to the 1,335 days, but you go your way till the end, for you shall rest and will rise to your inheritance at the end of the days. It's a little confusing there because he's talking about some different numbers. But here's the first thing I'd like you to know, and that is this, or the last thing in your outline. Expect things to get worse before they get better. But it will get better. So we need to expect things to get worse before they get better, but it will get better. And I know this seems like a terrible time because he's talking about the holy people. So in the beginning of that verse, he stands up and he's like, okay, there's going to be a time of tribulation. Remember, we started the beginning with the fact that Antichrist goes after the people of Israel, the holy people. That's what's going to happen. He's going to go after them. But I want you to know that time is for the people of Israel, that last 7 years. According to what we believe, the church isn't even going to go through this because at the beginning of that 7-year tribulation, you can put the timeline up there if you want. The church actually goes up to be with heaven. We don't have time to talk about this, but the church goes up to be with heaven with Jesus. And God is going to use this time, the millennial reign right here, the 7-year period, to work through Israel. during this time, there's all these cataclysmic events that are happening. If you read the book of Revelation, mountains are coming down, asteroids are hitting the planet. The water, third of the water is undrinkable. The land and sea animals are dying. Fish are dying. A third of the fish die. All these different things happen. Pestilence is occurring. Wars are happening. All during this period right here. And on top of that, the Antichrist is going to go after the people of Israel to try to wipe them out. And so this last area, he speaks specifically about Israel. That's what it's referring to. And so God never leaves himself without a witness. If the church goes, who is he going to work through? Well, he's working through the people of Israel to still reach the people that are on the planet. In fact, if you read the book of Revelation, there's 144,000 witnesses or people from Israel, and they describe what tribes they come from, 12,000 from each tribe, who are going to be throughout the planet telling people about the gospel. Not only that, there's these two powerful prophets that can call fire down from heaven, can perform miracles, and they're going to be preaching the gospel to the world. And not only that, there's going to be angels in heaven circling the earth, preaching the gospel. One's going to be preaching the gospel, another one's going to be warning them not to take the mark of the beast, which we're going to talk about that, which is the Antichrist says, if you don't worship me, you have to take my mark, so I know that you're loyal to me, and if you don't take the mark, then you die. And he says, don't take that mark. He's warning the people. You see, God will be using Israel, but it won't be easy. None of us are looking on at this going like, yeah, that's the place that I want to be right now. It's going to get worse. And every one of us here should kind of understand that, because the problem is we try to change what's happening and thinking that we're going to make that heaven here on earth. You see, we live in a time where it doesn't really cost us much to follow Jesus. I'm sure you didn't hit any picket lines trying to come to the church. I'm sure nobody tried to stop you from coming here or didn't keep you from reading your Bible or coming to your house and burn it or anything like that. None of us had any problems when it came to following Jesus. You know, the early church went through a tremendous persecution. Before the Roman Empire kind of recognized Christianity, they were killing people in the arenas in the middle of Rome, just feeding them to the lions. Nero would tie up Christians in his garden and light them and soak them with like oil and light them as candles as he rode through his garden. He was insane. These are things that occurred in the early church. And then even fast forward to about 500 years ago, when there were a group of people that said, you know what, every one of us should have the Bible in our own language. That would be kind of a cool thing. And so they start translating the Bible in German and English and Spanish and whatever else, French. And those people that would translate it got killed for it. What do you mean, you're going to translate the Bible? And they would burn them at the stake. It cost them their lives to provide a copy of the Bible for you and me. You know, in the end times, it'll cost you your life if you are a follower of Jesus. The Antichrist, like I said, is going to set up that statue in the Jewish temple to be worshipped. And he's supposed to be sacrificing to him and not to God anymore. They stopped the sacrifices. All the people are made to receive this mark. We've heard of it before. We've heard of it, 666, the mark of the beast. You can read about it in Revelation. We're not going to get into all of that. But either you take that and worship him, or you're either killed, or you can't buy or sell anything, because he controls the world market. And so unless you're able to produce that, they're like, okay, show me your mark, show me whatever. And if you don't have it, then you're either killed or you're like, yeah, you can't buy here today. You see, the Antichrist will seek to destroy all of the Israelites. That's what he was talking about. A time, and times, and half a time. 1 time is 1 year. 2 times is 2 years. And a half a time is a half. 3.5 years. 3.5 years they're going to go through this, where the Antichrist is going to come after them. Until all the other nations, we saw this in previous, that's why I encourage you to listen to some of the other messages. But Russia is going to come down, called Magog. He's going to come from the north into the Holy Land. China is going to come across, because the Euphrates River is going to dry up, and they're going to come straight across into the land of Israel. And even the kingdoms of the south, who he's kind of already defeated, are going to come up against him, and they're all going to fight in the valley of Megiddo, which is we call Armageddon. And there's this incredible valley there, and that's where his fight is going to take place. And at that moment, Jesus is going to return while they're all fighting. And they're going to turn, and they're going to try to fight God, Jesus, and he's just going to kind of wipe them out. But there was 2 other numbers, the strange numbers, just to clarify. There was 3.5 years is 1,260 days. But he says there's 1,290 days. What does that mean? Well, God's not going to clean up the whole place. He's going to let us clean it up, whoever's left on the planet. And they're going to take some time to get that statue out of the temple, to clean up all the stuff that's kind of messed up and get rid of a lot of these things. And then he says, blessed he who makes it to the 1,335 days. What's happening there? Well, in the book of Matthew 25, you can go in your own time, but he talks about the sheep and the goats and the separation of the sheep and goats. And he said, those of you who gave a cup of water to the least of these, my brothers, to Israel, those who protected Israel, and they're like, when did we do that? He said, when you did it to the least of my brothers. And those who didn't, those that protected Israel go into the millennial reign. At the end here, they're going to enter into this millennial reign, those people on the planet, and those that don't, do not. And that's what he's talking about. So if you made it to the 135 days, this is a prophecy not for you and me, but for the people who are living in that time. Like, if you can make it to then, you're going to rule and reign with me forever. You see, we live on earth with God in this, those people, and you and I will actually be there too. I just can't explain it all right now, but we're going to be here, and we live in this 1,000-year reign. What is the purpose of this 1,000-year reign? Like, what does it even make sense? I don't even know if I should believe that. Because God wants to make it very much like he did in Eden. You see, the devil, it says, is going to be bound up. He's not going to influence anybody. There's no satanic influence. There's no demonic influence at that time. It's going to be kind of all of us living together in peace and harmony, Jesus on the planet, we're worshiping him for 1,000 years so we can experience what he meant it to be like beforehand. But at the end, we're going to end up here and enter into a new heavens and a new earth where he remakes them both. You see, God had cursed the earth, and our sin has destroyed the earth to the point that we're at. And he cursed the earth so that we would not want to be here forever. Do you really want to live in a world where we're sinning against each other? He wants us to live in that harmony. We're all seeking it. That's part of the idea behind socialism. It's behind the idea of utopia, that we could all live in perfect harmony together. And God says, well, I'm going to make that happen for a period of time so you guys can experience what it will be like. And so God did that so that we would want to have a better place. That's why we live in the world that we do. So that we would look forward to a better promise. Not look forward to, because you and I, we could go like, yeah, I could live here forever. This is great if we could make it what we want. But that's why we can't make it what we want. Listen to what the book of Romans says. Paul's writing to this church. He says, for we know that all creation has been groaning as in pains of childbirth. Use that childbirth again. Right up to the present time. The whole creation is groaning. And we believers also groan, even though we have the Holy Spirit within us as a foretaste of future glory. For we long for our bodies to be released from the sin and suffering. We want newer bodies. We want better than what we have right now. Go ahead to the next verse, or the last part of the verse. We too wait with eager hope for the day when God will give us our full rights as his adopted children, including the new bodies he has promised us. You see, he's saying all of us, we're yearning for that moment. We're yearning for that time, and it's supposed to be that way. The purpose of the millennium just means 1,000-year reign is so that we could experience that. Heaven is not here on earth. It's not. But so many times we try to make it that way. We're like, if I could just be happy, if I could just find the perfect life, the perfect husband, the perfect wife, the perfect situation, the perfect job, the perfect place to live. And we keep looking and looking and looking. God says, it's not here. It's not here on this planet. We get to the end of this chapter and the message to Daniel is, it's not here. And it's not going to be here. You're not going to find it here. It is going to get worse. And the problem is when things start to get worse, we're going to try to change them. What can we do? How can we change it? And I'm not saying don't do anything. We need to prepare. I hope the message was partially clear in understanding that we need to be preparing, but not in the way we think. Because we're not going to change this world into heaven. Only God can do that. If we do, it's only going to cause confusion if we look for heaven here. If we try to attain it here, we're only going to get frustration because we're never going to be able to get there. Jesus said this. He says, maybe I didn't put it up. Is that the one? He says this, now when he was asked by the Pharisees when the kingdom of God would come, he answered them and said, the kingdom of God does not come with observation, nor will they say, see here or see there. You can't make it happen. It's not here on this planet. For indeed, the kingdom of God is within you. That's what he said. See, Jesus in your heart is where heaven is right now. Soon we'll be with him in person. But the time is coming. And that's why we need to be focusing on telling people about Jesus, telling people about our hope, helping people who need that help, a hope that is available to everybody. You see, we got to keep looking toward heaven. If anything, the signs of the times that are difficult, the signs of the time that are a tribulation to you and me should actually make us hope. Because that's what Jesus said. He's talking to them. Sorry for all these last verses, but I'm hoping it's helpful. At the time, they will see the Son of Man coming in the cloud with power and great glory. This is the time of the end. And when these things begin to take place, stand up and lift up your heads, because your redemption is drawing near. He's like saying, yeah, it's difficult right now. It is going to get worse, but it's also going to get better. In those moments when we see these things getting worse, he says, now is the time to actually have hope, because your time of redemption is coming soon. No matter how hard it gets, we need to keep on pushing. In a strange way, when we see these things coming, we actually just need to be encouraged. Jesus leaves these final words in the book of Revelation. It's right at the end, the last chapter. He says this, look, I'm coming soon. My reward is with me, and I will give to each person according to what they have done. He's talking about the good stuff. That's what he's saying. My reward is with me. He didn't say, I'm coming with my punishment. I'm coming with my reward for all those who have followed me. Let's pray. God, I thank you for the book of Daniel. And honestly, it was kind of weird preaching it, God, because it's not the kind of thing that we hear every day. This is not the kind of thing we hear every day at church on Sunday. And we're not necessarily talking about it, but God, it's written in your word. And if it's written in your word, you wrote it for a reason. Help us to understand the signs of the times, God. Help us to understand what we should be doing in those times, among our friends, among our family and coworkers and neighbors. God, help us to believe your word, trust your word, because I do believe, God, you're coming back. And I believe that this world is not heaven, but you do have heaven for us. And it's something that we can't even fathom or imagine, because that's how great it is. If we can remain in the attitude of prayer for just a moment. If you've never invited Jesus into your heart and asked him to forgive your sins, I just want to give you that opportunity right now. I mean, we kind of looked at this, and reading this is not to scare us into believing in God. But if it's true, we do believe God is coming back and we want to be a part of it, then we would want to invite him into our hearts, because there is a wall of separation between us and him that we created, because we are the ones who disobeyed. We were the ones who turned our back on God. All the time, God was waiting with open arms for us to be with him. But when we did that, there's a mountain of sin in between us. That's what our mistakes are called. And God says, this is not good. And I'm not going to stand for this. And so he came to this earth. He died on a cross. Jesus came to pay for yours and my sins so he could wipe that away. So there would be no more wall. There's no more pile of sin between you and him, so that you can come to him and be with him forever. And it's that simple. It's actually that simple. But it's only free, it's only ours if we invite him in. And if you want to do that today, I just want to lead you in a very simple prayer. And so I'm going to ask you to say that prayer right now out loud, but we're all going to pray out loud, so no one has to pray alone. Repeat after me. Dear God, I invite you inside to be my God, my Savior, and my friend. Forgive me of my sins. Wash me clean. I've decided today to follow you, Jesus, from this day forever. I'm yours. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Amen.